On Valentine's Day, Darius said his mother, Loretta, was in the hospital after a car wreck. He had to be there for her. But when I walked past Elysian Grove, the most lavish restaurant in all of Atlanta, I saw him through the glass. He was fastening an $800,000 custom necklace around his first love's neck. I turned and walked away. Atria M. My mother-in-law stared at the phone on speaker and asked her son, "Didn't your wife tell you?" That Valentine's night, Darius said his mama had been in a car accident and he had to stay at the hospital to look after her. But as I passed by Elysian Grove, I saw him sitting at the best table by the window. He was wearing the same charcoal gray suit I'd ironed for him that morning. Across from him sat Simone. Simone was in a champagne-colored gown, her hair swept up low, showing off the long, elegant line of her neck. On the table were roses, candles, red wine, and a black velvet box. I stood outside the glass. The February wind was cold, making my fingertips go numb. Inside, it was warm, like a whole different world. When Darius opened the box, the restaurant manager himself was bent over, standing by their table. The necklace lay on the black velvet, its diamonds sparkling like a chain of stardust. I recognized it. 3 months ago, I'd seen the design sketches at a private brand preview. A one-of-a-kind piece, with a rare pink diamond as the centerpiece, valued at a minimum of $800,000. I'd said offhandedly that day, a necklace like that should be for someone who is truly cherished. Darius was sitting next to me then, head down, answering an email. He didn't say a word. Now I see he remembered. It's just that the one being cherished wasn't me. Simone covered her mouth, her eyes welling up with tears. Darius stood up, walked around behind her, and gently pushed her hair aside. He fastened the clasp. His movements were so gentle, so careful, as if he was afraid of hurting her. We'd been married for 7 years, and he'd never once put a necklace on me. On my birthday, he had his assistant send over a standard issue bracelet. The receipt was still in the bag. There wasn't even a card. I made excuses for him back then. He's busy, I told myself. It's a critical time for the new company financing. He said married folks don't need all that sentimental fluff. Now I get it. It wasn't that he didn't want to be sentimental. He just didn't want to be sentimental with me. I pulled out my phone and snapped a picture of the scene inside. In the photo, he's leaning down, putting the necklace on Simone. She's tilting her head up, her gaze so soft she looks like she's just been proposed to. Outside the frame, my reflection was a ghostly shape on the glass, like a shadow that didn't belong. My phone vibrated. A text from Darius. "Ma's stable now, don't you worry, go to sleep early." I looked at the words and let out a dry laugh. He couldn't even be bothered to make up a better lie. I texted back, "Okay." Then I opened our location sharing app. Our locations had been linked for 7 years. It was his idea at first. "Zaria," he'd said, "I'm always busy with work. I worry about you out by yourself. Keeping this on is for your safety." Later, I realized who the location sharing was really convenient for. Him. He knew what time I went to the grocery store, what time I got to the hospital for my checkups, what time I came home. He also knew exactly when I wouldn't be around to bother him. I tapped stop sharing. A prompt popped up. "Are you sure you want to stop sharing your location with Darius?" I hit confirm. The ring was snug on my finger. I had to twist it a couple of times to get it off. When we got married, he said this ring wasn't expensive, but it held deep meaning. I believed him then. Now, I put the ring in my purse. I didn't throw it away. It was evidence, too. The wedding ring, the photos, the text messages, every single thing needed to be kept. As I turned to leave, the doorman at the restaurant recognized me. He hesitated. "Mrs. Morgan?" I stopped. His face changed, like he realized he'd said the wrong thing. I looked at him. "That table by the window tonight, did Mr. Morgan book it?" He was hesitant. "Don't be nervous," I said. "I'm just confirming the bill." Maybe it was how calm I was. He relaxed a little. "Yes, Mr. Morgan booked it a week in advance. He specifically requested the Valentine's Day package and the live violinist. A week in advance. That means he knew last week he'd be spending tonight with Simone. And at 3 p.m. today, he called to tell me his mother had been in a car accident." His voice was frantic. "Zaria, Ma got hit by a car. I gotta get to the hospital right now. I can't make dinner tonight." At that moment, I had just picked up the cake. The table was set with a meal I'd spent 3 hours cooking. I didn't complain. I just asked him, "Which hospital? I'll come too." He said, "No, don't." He said he could handle it. He said I'd just be in the way. Thinking back now, He wasn't afraid of me getting in the way. He was afraid of me running into the truth. I asked the doorman, "What else did they order?" The doorman whispered, "A bottle of red wine, a bouquet of imported roses, and a custom dessert." The dessert had writing on it. He trailed off. I finished for him. It said Simone's name. He nodded. I didn't ask any more questions. I walked to the curb and hailed a cab. The driver asked me where to. I opened my phone and searched for the nearest major hospital. Darius said his mother was in the hospital after a car wreck. I didn't know how much of that was true. But I knew that even though Loretta could be difficult, she was still a woman in her 60s. If something had really happened to her, I couldn't use her as an excuse, the way Darius did. I went to the hospital. The lights in the emergency room were piercingly white. The air was thick with the smell of antiseptic and the sound of anxious footsteps. I gave Loretta's name at the front desk. The nurse checked. Yes, we have her. Admitted about 2 hours ago. Fracture in her left leg, minor concussion. And the family? My hand, gripping my purse strap, relaxed a little. 2 hours. So his mother really was in an accident. But her son wasn't at the hospital. I asked, "Who's with her now?" The nurse frowned. "No family. We've been trying the emergency contact, but the calls aren't going through. The bill hasn't been paid either." I looked down at my phone. 10 minutes ago, Darius had texted me, "Ma's stable now." I asked the nurse where she was. The nurse led me to an observation room. Loretta was lying on the bed, her hair a mess, her face pale, her leg in a brace. She was a woman who prided herself on her appearance. She wouldn't even go to the store without putting on lipstick. Now her lips were chapped and dry, an IV in the back of her hand. She saw me and froze. "Zaria? Where's Darius?" I looked at her. She looked back at me. In that moment, the absurdity of it all hit me. She thought her son was with me. I thought her son was with her. And her son was at Elysian Grove, putting an $800,000 necklace on his first love. I put my bag down, went to pay the bill, signed the papers, and talked to the doctor about her condition. Then I arranged for an overnight caregiver. I was too familiar with these tasks. Loretta's high blood pressure checkups, I was there. The pipes bursting in the old family house, I found someone to fix it. Darius working himself into a severe ulcer flare-up, I was the one who drove him to the ER in the middle of the night. For 7 years, I was like a universal glue, patching up whatever cracked. They got used to it, and I almost got used to it too. At 2:30 May, Loretta woke up. She asked why Darius still wasn't here. I handed her some warm water. "You should call him." She looked at me, a flicker of unease in her eyes. "Did y'all have a fight?" I didn't answer. I just picked up her phone and dialed Darius's number. First call, no answer. Second call, still no answer. The third time he picked up. His voice was a low whisper on the other end. "Ma, what's going on?" Loretta asked right away. "Where are you?" Darius paused for a second. "I'm downstairs at the hospital. Just went to buy a few things." The room was so quiet you could only hear the beeping of the machines. Loretta's fingers started to tremble. She asked, "Downstairs at which hospital?" From the phone, a sleepy woman's voice murmured, "Darius, who is that?" It was Simone. Her voice was soft and drowsy, like she'd just been woken up. Loretta went completely still. I reached over and put the phone on speaker. Darius was clearly panicking. "Ma, I got something going on over here. I'll be right there." Loretta stared at the phone, her voice shaking. "Didn't your wife tell you?" There was a moment of silence on the other end. Darius asked, "Tell me what?" Loretta said, word by word, "I really was in a car accident." The line went dead quiet. After a few seconds, Darius's breathing got heavier. "Ma, what are you saying?" Loretta leaned back against the hospital bed, her face even paler than before. She wasn't looking at me. She was looking at the son she had raised for over 30 years. I said, "I really was in a car accident. A speeding car hit me at 8:30 p.m. An ambulance brought me here. The nurse called you, but you didn't pick up." Zaria rushed over in the middle of the night to pay the bills and sign the papers and talk to the doctors. From the other end of the line, Simone's voice piped up again. "Darius, what's wrong with your mom?" That question was like a slap in the face. Loretta closed her eyes. She had never liked me. She thought I didn't know how to kiss up, that my career was too demanding, that I hadn't gotten pregnant after 3 years of marriage. Later, she complained I wasn't as presentable after I quit my job. But as critical as she was, she never imagined her son would use her car accident as an excuse to be with his first love. She never imagined that when she was actually lying in an ER bed, The one by her side would be me. Darius finally found his voice. "Ma, I'm on my way." Loretta asked. "You said you were downstairs at the hospital. If you were downstairs, why was there a woman's voice on the phone?" "Ma, Simone was just—" Loretta cut him off sharply. "I don't want to hear who she is right now. You get to this hospital." The call ended. The room was silent again. The corners of Loretta's eyes were red, but she held back her tears. She was the kind of woman who was strong-willed in her youth and refused to show weakness in front of her daughter-in-law, even in old age. I handed her back the phone. She looked at me, her lips moving. "Zarya, I didn't know he—" "I know," I said, cutting her off. It wasn't to comfort her. It was because I didn't want to hear it. There was too much she didn't know. She didn't know that for the past 6 months, Darius had been saying he was working late every Wednesday, when he was actually with Simone at a jazz club. She didn't know that after Simone moved back to the States after her divorce, Darius helped her rent a high-rise apartment downtown. She didn't know the security deposit for that apartment came from our joint account. It's not that I hadn't been suspicious before, but every time I got close to the truth, Darius would always manage to push me back. He said I was being sensitive. He said Simone was just a woman who'd just been through a divorce and was all alone. He said that as his wife, I needed to have more grace. I actually used to wonder if I was the one being petty. Maybe this is just what happens in long marriages. Maybe love fades. Maybe he was just being nostalgic. It wasn't until tonight, when that $800,000 necklace was fastened around Simone's neck, that I finally understood. His idea of grace was for me to step back into the shadows so they could take center stage. The nurse came in to change her IV drip. Loretta winced in pain, her fingers gripping the bedsheet. I stood up and asked the nurse about what to watch for, noting down the medication times. The nurse said she needed another head CT in the morning and a family member had to be there to accompany her. I nodded. "I'll arrange for the overnight caregiver. Her son will be here to sign the subsequent paperwork." When Loretta heard the words overnight caregiver, she looked up at me. "You're not staying with me?" There was a hint of her usual commanding tone in her voice. Before, I would have immediately said, "Of course, Ma, I'll stay." Then I would have called off work, stayed up all night, cooked for her, taken her to her tests, and then been criticized that the soup was too bland or the clothes weren't folded right. But not today. I said, "I've handled the emergency admission and paperwork for tonight. Darius will be responsible for what comes next." Loretta was stunned, but he's so busy with work. I looked at her. He wasn't busy tonight. When I said that, Loretta's face flinched as if she'd been pricked by something sharp. She finally fell silent. At 3:40 a.m., Darius rushed into the hospital. He arrived in a hurry. One of his shirt buttons was in the wrong hole, his jacket slung over his arm, his hair a mess. The moment he walked into the room, he looked at Loretta, then his eyes shot to me. His expression wasn't guilt. It was anger. "Zarya, why didn't you tell me sooner?" I was sitting in the chair, holding the payment receipts. I looked up at him. "Weren't you the one who said you were at the hospital taking care of your mother?" Darius swallowed hard. Loretta's face was grim. "You're blaming her?" Darius took a deep breath, lowering his voice. "Ma, I'm not blaming her. I'm just saying, for something this serious, she should have contacted me immediately." I placed the receipts on the bedside table. "The nurse started calling you at 8:50 p.m. She called 6 times. You didn't answer. At 10:30 when I got to the hospital, I sent you a message. You replied that the situation was stable. I thought you already knew." Darius's face changed. "What did you send me?" I opened our chat history and showed it to him. I had texted, "What floor is Ma on?" He had replied, "Situation stable. Don't come, you'll just be in the way." It wasn't the most damning piece of evidence, but it was enough to silence the room. Loretta looked at him. "Where were you then?" Darius closed his eyes. "Ma, tonight was a misunderstanding. Simone just got back to the country. She doesn't have any friends here. I was just having Valentine's dinner with her, just buying her a necklace, just sleeping with her while I was in the emergency room." My voice wasn't loud, but every word landed with perfect clarity. Darius glared at me. "Zarya, don't you talk so nasty. Then don't you act so ugly." His face turned to stone. This was the first time in 7 years I had talked back to him in front of his mother. Before, a frown from him and I would have stopped. I was afraid of fighting, afraid of making things worse, afraid of my mother-in-law saying I was disrespectful. I was afraid of pushing our marriage over the edge with my own hands. I'm not afraid anymore, because it had already fallen. I was just the last one to know. Loretta propped herself up, her voice trembling. "Necklace? What necklace? I opened the photo and held it in front of her. In the picture, Darius was leaning down, fastening the necklace on Simone. The candlelight was soft, the roses in full bloom. It was a blinding contrast to the stark white light of the hospital room. Loretta stared at the photo for a long time without a word. Darius reached for the phone. I pulled it back. Don't touch it. This is evidence of marital asset transfer. He froze. Zarya, what are you talking about? Exactly what it sounds like. I locked my phone and put it back in my purse. Darius, starting tonight, your mother's care, her bills, her follow-up appointments, are all your responsibility. The joint account will be frozen. As for the irregular withdrawals, my lawyer will contact you tomorrow with the divorce papers. His face looked like he'd just heard a joke. All this over one dinner? I looked at him. It's not about one dinner. I pointed to the brace on Loretta's leg. It's about you using your own mother's car accident as a cover story. I pointed to my phone. It's about you using our money to buy your first love, an $800,000 necklace. Finally, I looked him in the eye. It's about me finally being done playing the fool for you. Darius's breath hitched. Loretta suddenly spoke. Darius, get out. Get out, she said, her voice tired. I don't want to see you. Darius stood there, his face a mask of disbelief. He probably never imagined that one day, he would be the one getting kicked out of the hospital room. Before he turned to leave, he lowered his voice and said to me, Zarya, we need to talk. I said, fine, when my lawyer is present. He sneered, you're going to regret this. I looked at him. My only regret is that it took me this long. He slammed the door on his way out. The sound of his footsteps faded down the hall. Loretta, lying in bed, suddenly asked me, are you really going to divorce him? I didn't answer right away. I just picked up my coat. The overnight caregiver will be here in half an hour. The follow-up appointment times are written on that paper. If you need anything, press the call button for a nurse. Darius is your son. He'll learn how to take care of someone. Loretta looked at me, and for the first time, there was no command in her tone. She asked, and what about you? I slung my bag over my shoulder. I'm going home to pack my things. The sky was still dark when I left the hospital. The cold wind on my face made my eyes sting. But I didn't cry. I just opened my phone and backed up all of tonight's photos, receipts, and chat logs to the cloud. Then I texted my lawyer, Amara. I've decided. We're getting a divorce. See you tomorrow. At 7 a.m., I got back to the house. The roses I'd bought yesterday were still by the door, where I'd left them. I'd bought them in the afternoon, planning to put them in the glass vase in the center of the dining table. Then Darius called about his mother's accident, and I rushed out without even unwrapping them. Now the petals were starting to wilt. Like a party no one showed up for. I didn't touch them. I went straight to the bedroom and pulled out a suitcase. I didn't have much. When I moved into this house 7 years ago, I brought 4 suitcases. Later, to make the house look more like the style Darius preferred, I slowly packed my own things away. Vibrant paintings were replaced with gray and white abstract art. My books were moved to the storage room. Loretta complained the scented candles I liked were too strong, so I never lit them again. Even in the closet, 2/3 of the space was taken up by Darius's suits and shirts. I packed my documents, jewelry, and a few pieces of clothing into the suitcase. Then I opened the safe. Inside were copies of the property deeds, the marriage certificate, joint account statements, a household ledger, and a draft of a postnuptial property agreement. This draft was from 2 years ago. At the time, Darius's company was having trouble with financing. He was worried about debt risk affecting our family assets and asked me to sign a supplementary agreement on asset holding and joint property management. I saw then that the terms were problematic and didn't sign. He was angry for 3 days. Later, he apologized sweetly, saying it was just a rough template from the company's lawyers and I shouldn't overthink it. I didn't press the issue, but I kept the draft. Looking at the terms now, every line reeked of calculation. If I had signed it back then, the 2 properties I helped him acquire after our marriage would have been classified as his personal investment income. I photographed it, scanned it, and backed it up. At 8:30, Amara called. She was my friend from college, now a top family law attorney. After she listened to my story, she only asked 3 questions. Can we trace the account that paid for the necklace? Yes. Do we have hospital records for the timeline of your mother-in-law's accident? Yes. How much money have you fronted for the Morgan family over the years? I looked at the ledger. A quick calculation. Over $370,000. Not including my unpaid labor after I quit my job. There was a second of silence on the other end. Amara said, "Zaria, this wasn't a marriage. This was long-term, unpaid emotional and financial support." I managed a small laugh. "I used to call it family." Amara didn't try to persuade me further. She said, "Be at my office at 2 this afternoon. Bring all the materials. And from now on, do not discuss any financial matters with Darius alone." I said, "Okay." After I hung up, I got a text from Darius. "Ma was emotional last night. Don't provoke her. Come back to the hospital this afternoon." I glanced at it and didn't reply. He sent another. "The caregiver doesn't know anything. Ma isn't used to strangers. Just take care of her for a few days. We can talk about the divorce later." I screenshotted the message. Then I replied, "Please contact the nurse." He called me directly. I didn't answer. The phone rang for a third time. I blocked his voice calls, leaving only text. He used to know exactly how to manipulate me. The moment his voice turned cold when he'd say, "Zaria, don't be dramatic," I would instinctively start explaining myself. I was afraid of annoying him, afraid he'd think I was being unreasonable, afraid he wouldn't come home. Now, I wasn't giving his voice the chance to get to me. At 11 a.m., Nia, Darius's sister, called. When she first graduated, she couldn't get into her dream company. I was the one who helped her with her resume, got her an interview, and even covered her rent for 6 months. The moment I picked up, she laid into me. "Zaria, you've gone too far. My mom's in the hospital after a car accident, you're not taking care of her, and now you're trying to divorce my brother?" I put the phone on the table and hit record. "Nia, do you know what time your mother was admitted to the hospital last night? How am I supposed to know? My brother said you were at the hospital throwing a fit, and you kicked him out." I let out a small laugh. "Did your brother also tell you he was at Elysian Grove with Simone last night?" The other end went quiet. A few seconds later, she lowered her voice. "So what? Simone just got back to the country. My brother was just looking out for an old friend. Can't you be less petty?" I asked. "When your mother was lying in the ER with no one to sign the papers, your brother was celebrating Valentine's Day with his old friend. You call that being petty?" Nia was speechless. She quickly found her footing again. "Whatever. Couples fight all the time. Don't use divorce to threaten him. You think you can find someone better than my brother if you leave him?" That line sounded so familiar. Loretta had said it. Darius had said it. Now Nia was saying it. They all thought I couldn't leave Darius. Because I had been so patient for so many years. So patient they thought I had no breaking point. I said, "Don't you worry. Whether I find someone else or not, it won't be your brother." Nia was furious. "Zaria, don't you forget? The house you're living in belongs to the Morgan family." I walked into the living room, looking at the abstract art on the wall. The down payment for this house was made by Darius before we got married, but I paid the mortgage for 6 years after we were married. "If you want to talk about the house, tell your brother to bring his bank statements and his lawyer." Her voice shot up. "You really want to split the money? My brother is the breadwinner. All you do is cook and look after the elderly." I looked down at the ledger, at the dense records. Nia's certification course last year, $3,800. Nia's living expenses while between jobs, $5,200. Loretta's 2 hospitalizations, out-of-pocket medication, $16,000. Renovations on the old family house, $47,000. The gifts for Darius's first major clients, I used my old connections in the jewelry world to negotiate those deals, saving him nearly $100,000. But they don't remember, because I never threw the ledger in their faces. I said, "Nia, I will have all the accounts ready." Nia sneered. "Fine, let's see just how calculating you can be." I hung up. At 2 p.m., I went to Amara's law firm. As she went through the documents, her frown deepened. If the necklace is confirmed to be an expenditure from marital assets, and the recipient is linked to the marital misconduct, we can demand its return or financial compensation. I nodded. And this part. She pulled out a few bank statements. "These transfers to Simone's apartment, a wellness studio, overseas courses. The notes are vague, but the payments came from your joint account. Did you know about this before?" "No." Amara looked up at me. "Then we're looking at malicious transfer or improper disposal of community property." I looked at the numbers, one by one, from a few thousand to tens of thousands. So the betrayal didn't start last night. Last night was just when he finally held the knife up to the light. Amara organized the materials into 3 files. First, a draft of the divorce agreement. Second, materials for a property preservation application. Third, a list of evidence. What you need to do now is not get soft. I said, I won't. But you should never say never. Because at 5 p.m., I received a text from Loretta. It was just one sentence. Zaria, Simone is at the hospital. I stared at the screen. A second later, Loretta sent a photo. Simone was standing by the hospital bed, holding a bouquet of flowers. And around her neck was that $800,000 necklace. When I arrived at the hospital, Simone was sitting by Loretta's bed, peeling an apple. Her fingers were pale, her movements slow, the peel kept breaking. Darius was standing by the window. When he saw me, his brow furrowed. What are you doing here? I looked at him and retorted, Didn't your mother ask me to come? His face stiffened. Loretta was propped up in bed. She looked better than last night, but her eyes were heavy. Simone put down the apple and stood up, a gentle smile on her face. Zaria, don't get the wrong idea. I heard about what happened to your mom and just wanted to come see her. She called me by my first name like we were old friends. I walked to the bedside and handed Loretta the follow-up report I'd brought. The doctor said they need to observe the concussion for another 48 hours. The leg doesn't need surgery for now, but she needs to do the physical therapy on schedule. Loretta took the report and nodded. Simone immediately chimed in. Don't you worry, ma'am. I know a really good physical therapist. I'll have Darius set up an appointment for you. Loretta's eyes drifted to her neck. That's a bright necklace you've got on. Simone subconsciously touched it, her cheeks flushing slightly. Darius gave it to me. It's really too much. I told him no, but he insisted. As she said this, she glanced at me. It was a look of innocence, but also a look of showing off. Darius immediately jumped in. Ma, it's just a gift. Simone's been going through a rough time, and I wanted to cheer her up. I almost laughed out loud. His own mother was lying in a hospital bed, and he was talking about cheering Simone up. Loretta's lips pressed into a thin line. She asked, How much was it? Simone feigned panic. Ma'am, why are you asking that? I answered for her. $800,000. Custom piece, one of a kind. Paid for with a card linked to my and Darius's joint marital account. The room fell silent. Simone's hand trembled, and the apple fell to the floor. Darius's face darkened. Zaria, you're not going to make a scene in the hospital room, are you? I said, I'm just answering your mother's question. Simone's eyes instantly turned red. Zaria, I really didn't know this was from your joint account. Darius told me it was from him, a personal gift. If I had known it would make you uncomfortable, I never would have accepted it. She said it so smoothly, absolving herself of all blame. Didn't know, innocent, didn't want to hurt me. But the necklace was still around her neck. I looked at her. Well, you know now. Are you going to take it off? Simone froze. She looked to Darius for help. Darius stepped in front of her. Zaria, don't be ugly. There is nothing ugly about me asking for my own property back. I looked at Simone. What's ugly is you knowing a married man is giving you an $800,000 necklace and then wearing it to visit his hospitalized mother. Simone's face turned pale. She bit her lip, tears welling in her eyes. Darius and I aren't what you think. We've known each other for years. He just feels bad for how hard my life has been. So, you accept necklaces from married men? She didn't answer. Darius exploded. That's enough. Simone just got divorced. Can't you stop being so aggressive? I looked up at him. She got divorced, so you want to get divorced too? He froze. Loretta suddenly spoke. Take the necklace off. Simone looked at her, shocked. Ma'am. Loretta's voice was quiet, but cold as ice. I said, take it off. Simone's tears finally fell. Ma'am, are you misunderstanding me too? I just came here today with good intentions, to visit you. Loretta stared at her. Good intentions? If you came to see me with good intentions, you wouldn't be wearing a necklace my son bought with our community property, flaunting it in front of my daughter-in-law. It was the first time Loretta had ever acknowledged me as her daughter-in-law in front of an outsider. The irony was, it happened as I was preparing to leave this marriage. Simone's fingers trembled as she tried to undo the clasp. But she wasn't familiar with it and fumbled with it for a while, unable to get it off. Darius couldn't stand it. Ma. Simone isn't feeling well. Don't push her. Loretta looked at her son, her eyes turning completely cold. I was in pain all night last night. Did you ever ask me if I was feeling well? Darius was speechless. I had no interest in watching their mother-son drama. I took an evidence bag out of my purse. Put the necklace in here. The lawyers will handle it from now on. Simone clutched the necklace. Darius gave this to me. I said, a high-value gift purchased with community property without the spouse's consent. I have the right to demand its return. You can either hand it over now, or you can hand it over in court. It's the same either way. The word court made Simone's face change. She finally realized I wasn't here to argue. I was here to collect evidence. Darius gritted his teeth. Zaria, you really have to take it this far? Take it this far? I pulled out last night's hospital receipt. You used your mother's car accident as an excuse to go out with your first love. You didn't answer your phone. You didn't pay the bills. And now, me asking for marital property back is taking it too far? I put the receipt in front of him. Darius, did you even for a second think about your mother lying here waiting for you? His face turned ashen for a moment. Loretta closed her eyes. Simone finally took off the necklace and put it in the evidence bag. But just before she let go, she whispered, Zaria, if you keep pushing him like this, you're only going to push him further away. I sealed the bag. That's great. She froze. I said, the further away, the better. Footsteps approached the door. Nia had arrived. The moment she walked in, she saw the evidence bag in my hand and Simone's red eyes. She immediately blew up. Zaria, are you bullying people in the hospital now? I looked at her. You're just in time. Are we still having that family dinner tonight? Nia sneered. Of course we are. The whole family is coming over. I want to see what kind of ledger you can come up with. I nodded. Good. Darius frowned. You're not going. I said, why not? Weren't you the ones who told me to make things clear? Loretta suddenly spoke. I'm going too. Everyone froze. Darius immediately objected. Ma, you just had an accident. Loretta looked at him. My leg is broken, but my eyes aren't blind. The Morgan family dinner was held at the old family house. They called it a family dinner, but it felt more like an interrogation. The moment I walked in, a dozen pairs of eyes were on me. Darius's aunt, Aunt Carol, sat in the center of the sofa, her face long and sour. Nia helped Loretta in. Loretta's leg was still in a brace, and she looked exhausted. And Simone was there too. She had changed into a simple cashmere sweater, her neck bare, her eyes slightly red. She stood next to Darius, looking like I had bullied her relentlessly. Aunt Carol spoke first. Zaria, dear, every marriage has its bumps. Darius is just a nostalgic man looking out for an old friend. For you to make a scene at the hospital, and now at home, you're just embarrassing him in public. I put my bag down. Aunt Carol, did you know Loretta was in a car accident last night? Aunt Carol was taken aback for a second. Of course I did. That's all the more reason for family to be understanding of each other. And do you know where Darius was at the time? Her eyes darted away. Men have their business dinners. It can't be helped. A Valentine's Day package, a violinist, roses, an $800,000 necklace, I said, looking at her. You call that a business dinner? The living room went quiet for a second. Darius said in a stern voice, Zaria, don't embarrass us in front of the family. I laughed. How am I the one causing embarrassment? He was the one wearing the necklace. You were the one lying. And your mother was the one lying in the hospital with no one to care for her. Loretta, sitting in her wheelchair, looked unwell but didn't stop me. Nia couldn't help but stand up. All you talk about is money. You've been living off the Morgans for years. Everything you have, my brother gave you. Now that you're getting a divorce, you start counting pennies. How materialistic. I looked at her. Nia, who paid for your certification course last year? She froze. What? I turned on the projector. The living room TV lit up. The first image was a transaction record. Recipient: Nia Morgan. Amount: $3,800. Memo: CPA training. The second image: $5,200. Memo: rent and living expenses. The third image: $1,800. Memo: interview attire and transportation. Nia's face turned bright red. Why are you showing this? I'm calculating, I said, and swiped to the next slide. Loretta's hospital out-of-pocket expenses: $16,800. Old family house renovations: $47,000. Old debts their late father left behind, which I paid off, $23,000. VIP client gifts for Darius's company, which I fronted, $78,000. The company's reimbursement later went into Darius's personal account. Page after page. No one in the living room said a word. Just because I didn't count before doesn't mean it didn't happen. Aunt Carol's face changed. You can't count things so clearly between family. I nodded. I used to think so too. That's why I never asked for it back. But now you're all saying I'm a freeloader. that I can't survive without Darius. So I thought I'd let everyone see who was really carrying this family. Darius shot up, wanting to turn off the TV. I had already put the remote in my bag. He walked to the front of the TV, his face dark. That's enough. I looked at him. It's not enough. The screen switched to the next page. Simone's apartment deposit, $24,000. Luxury wellness retreat in Bali, $12,000. Startup capital for her studio, $50,000. Custom necklace, $800,000. The payment path, the transaction time, the associated accounts. Simone's face was as white as a sheet. She quickly explained, I didn't ask for these. It was Darius. He felt he owed me. I cut her off. He owed you, so he compensated you with marital assets? She looked at Darius, her eyes red. Darius, say something. Darius's voice was tight. Zarya, you've been spying on my accounts. It's a joint account. I have the right to check it. You've been planning this for a long time. No, I said. I just finally started looking at the receipts. That statement hit harder than any accusation. Because everyone knew that for all these years, I didn't check. Not because I couldn't, but because I trusted him. Loretta had been silent the whole time. Until her sister-in-law, Aunt Carol, whispered, Darius was just being foolish. Zarya, for your mother-in-law's sake. Loretta suddenly looked up. Don't you use me as an excuse? Aunt Carol froze. Loretta's voice was slow, but every word was clear. Last night I was lying in the hospital. It was Zarya who signed the papers and paid the bills. We couldn't get a hold of Darius. Today, when Simone came to the hospital with that necklace, it was Zarya who reminded me that the money wasn't just Darius's. She looked at Darius. I used to think Zarya wasn't soft enough, that she didn't know how to flatter people. Now I know that the ones who are too good at flattering have poison in their hearts. The color drained from Simone's face. Darius looked at his mother in shock. Ma, you're taking her side? Loretta gave a bitter laugh. I'm taking the side of the truth. The living room fell silent again. At that moment, Darius finally started to look a little panicked. Because he had always assumed the Morgan family would stand behind him, just like they had countless times before. As long as he said I was overreacting, everyone would tell me to just endure it. But this time, with the ledger, the medical records, the photos laid out, if they wanted to play blind, they'd have to consider if they had the nerve to do it. Darius, suppressing his anger, walked up to me. What is it you really want? I said, a divorce is fine. He sneered. But the house is mine, the company is mine. You haven't worked in years. Don't think you can take what isn't yours. I looked at him. You're sure you want to play it this way? Zarya, don't think you can threaten me with a few bank statements. His voice dropped. You stop this now, and I can give you a sum of money. Otherwise, if you drag this out, you'll only end up looking worse. I nodded. Okay. He thought I was scared. The next second, I pulled out the lawyer's letter that Amara had prepared and placed it on the table. Then we'll see you in court. Simone suddenly stood up, her face pale. Darius, I don't feel well. She wanted to leave. I blocked her way. Simone, returning the necklace is just the first step. You'll also be receiving a notice for the return of other improper gains. She looked at me, and for a moment, the soft act was gone. Her eyes were cold. Zarya, you really think he'll come back to you after all this? I laughed. You're wrong again. I picked up my bag. I never wanted him to come back. The next morning, I went to the VIP center at Legacy Jewels. I knew this place well. 5 years ago, I was a curation consultant at Legacy, responsible for 3 of their high jewelry exhibitions. Later, Darius said his mother's health was poor, and his company was busy, and he hoped I could shift my focus back to the family. Zarya, he'd said, I know what you're capable of. Once we get through the next couple of years, you can go back whenever you want. 2 years passed, then another 2. In the end, even I almost forgot that I wasn't always Mrs. Morgan. I was Zarya. The receptionist recognized me, a flicker of surprise in her eyes. Zarya? I smiled. I have an appointment with Director Carter. Director Carter was my former boss. She didn't waste time with small talk and took me straight to her office. That pink diamond necklace you mentioned on the phone, I looked it up. She pushed a file towards me. The buyer was Darius Morgan. The payment was made with a secondary card linked to your joint marital account. The person who signed for it was Simone. I stared at Simone's signature on the delivery slip. Her handwriting was showy, but clear. Director Carter looked at me, a hint of sympathy in her eyes. Zarya, that necklace never should have been sold to him. I looked up. She sighed. When the internal list came out, you were the first person I thought of. You understand the piece and you deserve it. But then he said a client had specified the purchase through a high-level connection, with an unlimited budget. I managed a small smile. So I almost had it. Not almost, Director Carter said. The designer's original name for it was Zaria. Because during one of your exhibitions, you said that jewelry shouldn't just be a testament to being loved, but also a testament to self-worth. My fingers froze. Sunlight from the window fell on the papers. It was all so absurd. A necklace that was once inspired by me was ultimately bought by my husband for his first love, Simone. She wore it in the candlelight on Valentine's Day, receiving his affection, while I stood outside the glass, a stranger to my own life. Director Carter asked quietly, "Do you need me to print out the purchase order?" "Yes, and one more thing." She pulled out another internal order form. Simone also ordered a matching pair of earrings last month. The notes say, "For wedding reception." I looked up. Wedding? Yes. She didn't pay in full, just the deposit. The payer was also Darius Morgan. I picked up the order form. Earring deposit, $120,000. Wedding reception. So they were already planning a wedding. While I was still scheduling Loretta's follow-up appointments, ironing Darius's shirts, and keeping the books for his family, he was already preparing wedding jewelry for another woman. A coldness spread through me, but I didn't lose my composure. I put the documents into a file, page by page. Director Carter said, "Zaria, come back to work. We have an exhibition next month, Jewels of the Independent Woman. I need a head curator." I paused. "I've been away for too long. You've been away from the job, not from your talent." Her words hit me, more effective than any consolation. I clutched the file, and I remembered the first year of our marriage. I'd worked on a project for 3 days straight with only 4 hours of sleep. Darius held me and said, "My wife is so amazing." Later, he said, "Someone has to make a sacrifice for the family." Sacrifice is an easy word to say, but when it falls on a person, it means having your name slowly erased. As I was leaving Legacy, I got a text from Simone. "Zaria, do you have time to talk?" Followed by an address. The afternoon tea lounge at the Four Seasons. I looked at the message and smiled. She was finally getting nervous. I forwarded the message to Amara. Amara replied, "You can go. It's a public place, so recording is legal. Stay within legal boundaries." The main goal is to get her on record talking about the finances, the relationship, and her intentions. "Don't let her provoke you." I replied, "Understood." At 3 p.m., I arrived at the hotel on time. Simone was already there. She was wearing a pale blue suit, her makeup flawless. No necklace, but small diamond studs in her ears. She saw me and stood up. "Zaria." I sat down. "Don't call me that. We're not that close." The smile on her face froze for a second before she recovered. "Fine, then I'll call you by your full name." I placed my phone on the table, the recording already on. Simone stirred her coffee. "I know you're very angry right now, but you can't force matters of the heart. Darius has always had me in his heart. You must have sensed that for a long time." I looked at her. So, instead of 3 people being miserable, it's better to end things gracefully. She took a card out of her purse and pushed it across the table. "There's $5 million in here. Consider it compensation from me. You signed the divorce papers voluntarily and stopped pursuing the necklace and the other money." I looked down at the card. $5 million to buy out my 7-year marriage. Simone said softly, "It's not a bad deal for you. After all, you haven't worked these past few years. You'll need something to live on after you leave Darius." Her words finally revealed her true contempt. She knew who I was. She just thought marriage had worn me down to nothing. I asked, "Is this your money or Darius's?" Her eyes flickered. "Does it make a difference?" "It does. Your money is compensation. His money is still community property." Simone's face darkened. "Zaria, you don't have to be so calculative. Darius doesn't love you anymore. Clinging to the money will only make him despise you more." I laughed. "Simone, you seem to have misunderstood something. I'm not chasing the money because I still love him. I'm chasing it because I don't want you to get it for free." Her fingers tightened around her coffee cup. "You think you've won?" "He came looking for me last night after he left the hospital." A sharp sting went through my heart, but it was just for a moment. I said, "Then you should be happy." "Why did you still ask me here?" Her face changed. I continued, "Because the lawyer's letter arrived. You're afraid you'll have to return the necklace, give back the apartment money, And you're afraid Darius will throw you under the bus to save himself. Simone stared at me, finally dropping the act. She sneered. You're smart. A pity you're smart too late. She leaned in closer, her voice low. Do you know why Darius can't leave me? Because I'm not like you, living life like it's a ledger. A man wants to come home to softness, not a manager with a handful of receipts. I didn't speak. She continued. He told me being with you is exhausting. You're too capable, too calm, you have to arrange everything. You make him feel like a bum. I looked at her. I believe that. Darius really doesn't like feeling indebted, so he reframed my contributions as control and his betrayal as just needing to breathe. I took a sip of my coffee. Anything else? Simone froze. I said, keep going. You might as well tell me when you're planning to get married. Her face changed. She looked down at my phone. You're recording me. I picked up the phone. In a public place, recording my own conversation is perfectly legal. Every word you said was crystal clear. Simone shot up from her seat. Zarya, you're despicable. People around us started to look over. I slowly pushed the card back to her. What's despicable is using someone else's marital assets to make an offer for the wife to bow out gracefully. Her breathing was ragged. I picked up my bag and paused as I walked past her. Simone, don't worry. Those wedding earrings you wanted, they'll be on the evidence list soon enough. The color drained completely from her face. I walked out of the hotel. The sun was blinding. My phone buzzed with a message from Amara. The lawyer's letter has been received. Darius is looking for you. Almost at the same second, Darius's call came through. I didn't answer. He texted, Zarya, are you serious about this? I replied, we're just getting started. The first time Darius came to my new apartment, it was 9 p.m. It was a small place, 2 bedrooms, close to Legacy Jewels headquarters. I had just moved in that afternoon. Suitcases were still open on the floor. On the dining table were the materials Amara had organized. When the doorbell rang, I was sorting the ledger by year. On the security monitor, Darius stood outside. He looked terrible. He was still in his work suit, his tie loosened, his eyes bloodshot. I didn't open the door. I spoke through the intercom. If you have something to say, text me. He was barely holding back his anger. Zarya, open the door. This isn't the time to talk. Why didn't you tell me you were moving? I looked at the empty living room. Do I need your permission to leave my own marriage? There was a few seconds of silence from the other side. His voice softened. Zarya, I know I hurt you last night, but sending the lawyer's letter to my office, it's causing a lot of problems. So he wasn't here to apologize. He was here for damage control. I said, you giving our money to Simone also caused problems. He took a deep breath. The necklace, I can make her return it. The other money, we can sort it out. But a divorce is not a small thing. I found it laughable. A 7-year marriage, he could tear it apart with one lie. But when I wanted to leave, he said it's not a small thing. I unlatched the security chain but didn't open the door fully. What do you want to talk about? He saw me and his expression relaxed for a moment. He probably thought that as long as he saw me, I would soften, just like before. He slowed his voice. Ma's not doing well right now. Come home first. Let's not make a scene at a time like this. What would I go back for? To take care of Ma. To keep the family stable. We can talk about the rest later. Darius, I looked at him. Have you ever noticed that every time you need something from me, you always say, we'll talk about it later? He frowned. I continued. I wanted to go back to work. You said we'll talk later. I wanted to check our joint account. You said we'll talk later. I asked you about your relationship with Simone. You said we'll talk later. Now I want a divorce. And you're still saying we'll talk later. He was silent. I said, but my later has already been delayed by you for 7 years. His expression shifted. You really have to count everything? Yes. I picked up a list from the table. This is the money you've transferred to Simone in the last 6 months. This is the necklace and the earring deposit. This is the chat log where you lied to me about your mother's car accident. This is the hospital's ER timeline. If you want to talk, have your lawyer schedule a time. He looked at the papers, his face grim. You've investigated so thoroughly. You've wanted a divorce for a long time, haven't you? That finally made me laugh. Darius, you betray me, and then you blame me for finding out too completely? He was speechless. Just then his phone rang. The caller ID said, Simone. He glanced at it and didn't answer. I said, you should get that. Maybe she's calling to discuss how to explain that $5 million. His head snapped up. You've seen her? I nodded. She invited me for coffee, offered me a settlement to get out of the way. She also said you told her being with me was exhausting. His face turned an ugly shade. She didn't mean it like that. See, you're already making excuses for her. The words hung in the air. He had nothing to say. Through the crack in the door, we were separated by the security chain. It was a short chain, but it finally felt like it was separating us. He used to come home late, and I'd leave a light on for him. Now he was standing outside my door, and I didn't even want to open it all the way. Darius said in a low voice, "Zarya, I admit I've been a mess lately. After Simone came back, I did have some trouble letting go of the past, but I never thought about divorcing you." I looked at him. "You just wanted to have both." He closed his eyes. "Sometimes men make mistakes. So women should just clean up after them? That's not what I mean." "Then what do you mean?" He looked at me, his voice tired. "I just feel like we've had 7 years together. It shouldn't all be destroyed just because Simone came back." I nodded. "You're right. It's not because she came back." I took out the photo and held it up for him to see. "It's because you chose her." In the photo, the necklace was being fastened around Simone's neck. I said, "You chose to lie. You chose to be absent. You chose to use our money to please her. You chose to put your phone on silent when your mother was in a car accident. Every single step, you walked it yourself." His lips moved, but he didn't argue. "Because you can't argue with facts." He could only change the subject. "Ma asked today when you were coming back. She can contact me directly. She needs you. She has a son." Darius's face soured again. "Zarya, do you have to be so cold-blooded?" When he said that, I looked at him and suddenly, I wasn't angry anymore. Truly, I wasn't angry. Because I realized, it's not that he doesn't know I'm in pain. He just doesn't think my pain is important. I slowly started to close the door. "Darius, the night your mother was in that accident, you don't get to talk to me about being cold-blooded." He put his hand out to stop the door. "Zarya." It was the first time tonight he'd said my name so softly. I paused. He said, "Don't let things get to a point of no return." I looked at his hand. The same hand that had fastened a necklace on Simone yesterday was now trying to stop my door. I said, "We're already there." And I closed the door. At 10 p.m., Amara sent me the court documents for asset preservation. At 11 p.m., Director Carter from Legacy texted, saying the head curator position for the Independent Woman exhibition was still open for me. At midnight, Loretta texted me, "Zarya, I need to talk to you, not to plead for Darius." I looked at the message for a long time, then replied, "Tomorrow afternoon, in the hospital meeting room." After sending the text, I turned off the lights. The small apartment was quiet. No sound of Darius coming home late. No calls from Loretta criticizing my cooking. No texts from Nia asking for money. I lay in bed, and for the first time, the quiet didn't feel empty. It felt like my life was finally making space for me. The next morning at 8 a.m., I went to the bank. For the past 6 years, many of the Morgan family's expenses were linked to my accounts. Automatic deductions for hospital follow-ups, property fees for the old house, Loretta's health supplement subscriptions, Nia's supplementary credit card, and even some services for Darius's company, for VIP hosting, linked to my accounts for convenience. Each one was small on its own, but together, they were like 1,000 tiny tubes, drawing blood from me day after day. When the bank manager printed out the list, it was 3 pages long. He asked me, "Ma'am, are you sure you want to cancel all automatic payments?" I said, "Yes." He reminded me, "Canceling some of these services may affect the other party's usage." I signed. Then the person using them can sign up for themselves. After signing the last page, my wrist actually felt lighter, like I had taken off invisible shackles. At 10 a.m., the hospital's payment system sent an alert, insufficient balance. At 11 a.m., Darius texted me, "Why won't Ma's physical therapy deposit go through?" I replied, "I have canceled the automatic payment." He replied almost instantly, "Are you crazy? Using my mother's health to throw a tantrum at a time like this?" I looked at the screen, my fingers steady. "Your mother has a son. Please pay the deposit yourself." He tried to voice call. I didn't answer. He texted, "I'm in a meeting. You cover it first." I replied, "I have things to do too." 4 words I had never said before. In the Morgan family, my things always came last. I had a project. They said an old person's checkup was more important. I had a dinner with friends. They said a family meal was more important. I wanted to rest. They said women shouldn't be so delicate. Eventually, they really believed I had nothing of my own to do. At 11:30 a.m., Nia sent me a string of messages. Why won't my card work? Zaria, are you really that petty? Just because of what I said yesterday, you canceled my supplementary card? I replied, please link your spending to your own card. She replied with a dozen exclamation points. I didn't look again. At 1 p.m., Darius's assistant called me. Zaria, the floral vendor for the VIP dinner, says the deposit hasn't been paid. You've always handled this before. I cut her off. From today on, all matters related to Mr. Morgan's company should be directed to Mr. Morgan. The assistant was stunned. But Mr. Morgan said you were more familiar with the process. I am no longer responsible. I hung up and added the number to my evidence file. Much of Darius's polished image was maintained by me in the shadows. He thought those resources just ran on their own, that every dinner party would go off without a hitch, that the gifts his clients received were naturally exquisite, that his mother would always be cared for in the hospital, that his sister would always have someone to cover her expenses. Now that I let go, he was finally discovering that a lot of things would fall. At 3 p.m., I went to the hospital meeting room as scheduled. Loretta was in a wheelchair, a blanket over her legs. She looked more haggard than a few days ago. The first thing she said when she saw me was, I was the one who had the nurse call him about the deposit. I didn't say anything. She gave a bitter laugh. You probably think I'm going to blame you again. I would have before. She paused, looking out the window. I always felt that since you married into the Morgan family, you should take the family's responsibilities as your own. Darius is busy, so you should do more. Nia is young, so you should look after her. I'm old, so you should be more considerate. She turned to look at me. I never thought about what right I had to expect that from you. The words came too late. But a late awakening is better than continuing to play dumb. I sat down. What did you want to talk about? Loretta took an old bank card out of her purse. This has some of the money for the medical expenses you've paid for me over the years. I had the nurse help me check the records. I can only give you $60,000 back for now. I'll pay you the rest slowly. I didn't take it. This is between you and Darius. My lawyer will handle it all. Loretta's hand hovered in midair, her eyes red. Zaria, I'm not trying to buy your forgiveness. I've been thinking these past 2 days. If you hadn't come that night, what would have happened to me? What would have happened? The nurse might have kept calling. The payment might have been delayed. Loretta might have been alone in the ER until morning. And Darius would have woken up next to Simone, still lying, Ma's stable. I said, you should ask Darius that. Loretta nodded. I did. He said he just had a little to drink. His phone was on silent, and he didn't expect a real accident. She laughed, a painful sound. He also said that you knew I was in the hospital but deliberately didn't tell him, to make him look bad. Of course. I wasn't surprised. Darius was an expert at breaking up his mistakes and distributing the blame to others, leaving only a little unintentional part for himself. Loretta looked at me. I didn't believe him. I looked up. She said, because on the phone that night, I heard with my own ears him say he was downstairs at the hospital. She took out her phone. I have call recording. I was stunned. Loretta had a habit of recording calls. She was getting older and couldn't remember what the doctors told her, so she kept the auto record feature on. Darius knew this. He probably just forgot. Loretta sent me the audio file and the screenshot of the missed calls from the ER nurse. I looked at the files on my phone. This was crucial evidence. It not only proved that Darius lied, but also that he was unreachable after his mother's car accident and then tried to blame me for it. I asked, are you sure you want to give this to me? Loretta closed her eyes. I'm his mother. But I can't lie for him anymore. Suddenly, there were hurried footsteps outside the meeting room. The door was pushed open. Darius stood there, his face like a thundercloud. Ma, what are you doing? Loretta's hand trembled. I put my phone away. Darius strode in, staring at me. Zaria, are you even going to use my mother now? I stood up. She's a grown woman. She knows what she's doing. He looked at Loretta, his voice tight with anger. Ma, are you really helping an outsider against me? The word outsider. Loretta went rigid. I was stunned for a moment too. 7 years. I went to the hospital for the Morgans, paid their bills, hosted their family dinners, took care of his mother, helped his sister. And in the end, he still called me an outsider. Loretta suddenly raised her hand and slapped him. It wasn't a loud slap, but all the air in the room seemed to freeze. Loretta's eyes were red as she said, she's an outsider? Then what does that make the person you were with that night? After that slap, Darius didn't say another word. He probably couldn't believe that Loretta would hit him for me. Growing up, Loretta was strict with him, but she never actually laid a hand on him. He was the eldest son of the Morgan family, her proudest achievement. But this time, that pride was shattered. I didn't stay to watch their mother-son conflict. As I was leaving the hospital, Amara called. The recording and the missed call log are critical. Is Loretta willing to provide a written statement? She is. Then the situation will change. Darius was trying to paint you as emotional and deliberately neglectful of your mother-in-law. That path is now blocked. I looked at the people coming and going at the hospital entrance. He'll find another path. Amara said, "So you need to move fast." I said, "Understood." That afternoon, I went back to what was once my home. Not to pack, to change the locks. Although Darius had made the down payment on this house before our marriage, I had contributed significantly to the mortgage and renovations after. Until the divorce settlement was finalized, I had the right to live there. And I no longer wanted him to have free access to my space. The locksmith asked me how many keys I wanted. I said, "Give me both." The wedding photo was still hanging on the wall. In the photo, I was wearing a white gown, a light smile on my face. Darius stood beside me, his hand on my waist. I thought then that I finally had a home. Looking at it now, the woman in the photo just seemed too young, too trusting of promises. I took the photo down and leaned it against the wall. I didn't smash it, didn't tear it. It was also a piece of evidence. Proof that I had once entered this marriage with a sincere heart. And proof that I didn't want to run from the very beginning. At 6 p.m., Darius came back. He entered the old passcode. The lock beeped. Error. He tried again. Still error. I sat in the living room, watching his face grow dark on the security monitor. He pounded on the door. "Zarya, open up." I didn't move. He pounded again. "You changed the locks." I walked to the door. "Yes, this is my home. It is also our shared marital residence. If you wish to enter, please make an appointment in advance. With your lawyer present." He laughed, a humorless sound. "You won't even let me in my own house now? Didn't you call me an outsider yesterday? Outsiders can't just walk into other people's homes." There was silence from the other side. After a moment, his voice softened. "Zarya, I didn't mean it like that. I understood it perfectly fine." "No, you don't." His tone, for the first time, had a note of urgency. "I was just angry. You know I don't think of you like that." I stood on the other side of the door, looking at his shadow. "Darius, the things people say when they're angry are often what they truly feel." He didn't argue. Just then, the elevator chimed. Simone had arrived. She was wearing a long coat, holding a thermal container. She saw Darius standing at the door and froze. "Darius? Why aren't you going in?" I watched this drama unfold through the peephole. Darius's face was grim. "What are you doing here?" Simone said softly. "I made some soup for your mom. I wanted to see you before I went to the hospital. You haven't been answering my texts all day." I was worried. As she spoke, she reached out to take his arm. Darius instinctively pulled away. The smile on Simone's face froze. I smiled to myself on my side of the door. A man's devotion can be so fragile. When things are good, the old flame is a romantic regret, a gentle memory, the one that got away. The moment trouble starts, she becomes a problem. Simone clearly sensed it too. She asked softly, "Did Zarya give you a hard time again?" I turned on my phone's recorder. Darius lowered his voice. "Let's not talk about it here." Simone's eyes turned red. "Darius, I've been humiliated by her for you. I returned the necklace. She's coming after the money. And now you want me to hide?" Darius rubbed his temples, annoyed. "I'm dealing with the company, the hospital, and the lawyers right now. Can you just not add to it?" The words hit Simone like a slap. "I'm adding to it?" She laughed, a cold sound. "Who was it that said this 7-year marriage was just a duty? Who was it that said you'd divorce her as soon as your mom was stable? Who was it that ordered earrings for me and said I wouldn't have to hide in the shadows next Valentine's Day?" The hallway went completely silent. I stood inside the door and saved the recording. Darius hissed. "That's enough." Simone finally broke down in tears. "You regret it now, don't you? Because she started dividing the assets. Because your mom isn't on your side anymore. So now you regret it." Darius didn't speak, but his silence was the answer. The thermal container in Simone's hand crashed to the floor. Soup splattered everywhere. She turned and ran. Darius stood at my door, looking completely drained. I didn't open the door. This drama had nothing to do with me. At 8 p.m., the hospital called. It wasn't Loretta, it was a nurse. "Mrs. Morgan. Loretta Morgan's medical records are missing." She said that she gave them to a Miss Simone to get them copied, but now we can't get in touch with her. I closed my eyes. Simone was finally starting to show her true colors. I asked the nurse, "Which records?" "The CT report, the medication list, and a copy of the accident report." I said, "Are the originals still in the hospital system?" "Yes." "Good. Please make a note that no further records are to be released to any unauthorized persons without the patient's or legal family's consent." After hanging up, I texted Loretta, "Did Simone take your medical records?" A few minutes later, Loretta replied. She said Darius asked her to. A moment later, a second message came. "Zaria, I've made up my mind. Come tomorrow. I'll write the statement for you." The next morning, Loretta kicked Darius out of her hospital room. When I arrived, he was standing at the end of the hall, smoking. Smoking was forbidden in the hospital. He was just holding the unlit cigarette. When he saw me, he immediately walked over. "Zaria, Ma's not stable. Don't agitate her anymore." I stopped. "I'm not the one agitating her." His eyes were dark with exhaustion. In just a few days, he seemed to have aged several years. The company's anniversary gala was approaching. The lawyer's letter about the property dispute had been delivered to one of the board members, an investor. Simone was also starting to cause trouble. He was finally beginning to understand. A wife he had ignored for 7 years held so many details that could shatter his carefully constructed image. But he still wouldn't admit he was wrong. He just felt like he was losing control. I walked around him. He grabbed my wrist. "Zaria, let's not take this to court." I looked down at his hand. "Let go." He didn't. "I can sign an agreement. I'll pay you back for the necklace. I'll cut things off with Simone. You want to go back to work at Legacy? I support you. We can start over." If he had said this 6 months ago, I might have cried. 3 months ago, I might have hesitated. Even on the afternoon of Valentine's Day, if he had just said, "My head is a mess, let's talk," I would have listened. But now, after the evidence was laid out, after his mother's disappointment, after his own interests were threatened, for him to say, "Let's start over," it was too late. I pried his fingers off one by one. "Darius, you don't want to start over. You just want to go back to a time when I would clean up your messes for you." His hand went limp. The hospital room door opened. Loretta was in her wheelchair, a nurse pushing her out. She saw Darius and her face hardened. I said, "I'm only seeing Zaria today." Darius's voice was tight. "Ma, what are you trying to do?" Loretta looked at him. "I'm doing what I should have done a long time ago." In the meeting room, Amara was already there. She was wearing a black suit, a voice recorder, files, and an ink pad on the table. Loretta sat down and looked at me first. "Zaria, I know saying sorry now doesn't mean much." I didn't respond. She continued. "But I have to say what needs to be said." She pushed a handwritten statement towards me. The writing was a bit shaky, but the content was clear. First, on the evening of Valentine's Day at 8:30 p.m., she was in a car accident and taken to the hospital. Second, the ER nurse called Darius's phone multiple times with no answer. Third, Zaria arrived at the hospital around 10:30 p.m. and completed the payment, paperwork, communication with the doctor, and nursing arrangements. Fourth, at 3 a.m., she called Darius, who lied and said he was downstairs at the hospital. Simone's voice was heard during the call. Fifth, afterwards, Darius tried to shift the blame for his late arrival onto Zaria. Sixth, Simone had taken copies of some of her medical records without her full understanding. Every point was solid. Amara asked, "Mrs. Morgan, do you confirm that the contents of this statement are true and that you are providing it voluntarily?" Loretta nodded. "I confirm." Darius stood in the doorway, his face pale. "Ma, you're really going to do this to me?" Loretta didn't look at him. "I'm being responsible for the facts." "I'm your son." Loretta finally looked up. "And that's why it hurts more." Her voice trembled. "I can accept that your marriage failed. I can accept that you don't love Zaria anymore. But I cannot accept you using my life to tell a lie. I cannot accept you letting a woman who has cared for me for 7 years take the blame for you." Darius's eyes turned red. "That day, I just what?" Loretta cut him off. "Just had your phone on silent? Just had a little to drink? Just having dinner with her? Just forgot that your mother might actually be in the hospital?" Each "just" was like the back of a knife. Darius was utterly speechless. Loretta pressed her thumb into the ink and onto the paper. The red thumbprint sealed the document. In that moment, I felt no sense of victory, just a delayed exhaustion. To think that for a woman in a marriage to prove she wasn't in the wrong, It required so many papers, so many records, so many witnesses. Amara collected the documents. Next, we will formally submit a request for mediation. If the other party refuses a reasonable settlement, we will proceed to litigation. Darius suddenly looked at me. Zarya, are you satisfied now? I looked at him. No. He was stunned. I said, because I shouldn't have needed all of this just to prove I wasn't the one in the wrong. The meeting room fell silent. The anger in Darius's eyes finally shattered. He said in a low voice, Zarya, I really know I was wrong. I shook my head. No, you just know it hurts now. After saying that, I stood up. Loretta suddenly called out, Zarya. I turned back. She took an old box out of her purse. This was a jade bracelet from when I was young. It's not an apology, and it's not to make you stay. I just want to give it to you. It's okay if you don't want it. I looked at the box. Loretta had once said that this bracelet was only for the daughter-in-law of the Morgan family. When I first got married, I had secretly hoped for it. But in 7 years, she never once offered it to me. Now that she was offering it, it had lost its meaning. I pushed the box back. Mrs. Morgan, you should keep it for yourself. Her eyes dimmed, but she nodded. All right. I walked out of the hospital. Darius followed me. Zarya, the company anniversary gala, don't come. I stopped. Why? He said, I will handle everything. Simone will also publicly clarify our relationship. If you come, you'll just make things ugly. I looked at him and suddenly understood. He wasn't afraid of me looking ugly. He was afraid of himself looking ugly. The company's anniversary gala was his most important event of the year. Investors, partners, old clients would all be there. Many of those relationships I had helped him build and maintain over the years. He wanted to declare on that day that the situation was stable. He wanted to hide me away. He wanted, just like in the past, for all the cracks to be covered by my silence. I smiled. Darius, I'm going? His face changed. I said, and I'm going to be dressed to kill. The Origin Tech anniversary gala was held in the ballroom above Elysian Grove. How fitting. Right below was the restaurant where he had put the necklace on Simone on Valentine's Day. When I arrived, the party was just starting. The hall was brilliantly lit, people mingling by the champagne tower. Darius stood at the front of the main stage, wearing a black tuxedo, a practiced smile on his face. And Simone was by his side. She had come after all. She wasn't wearing the pink diamond necklace, but she was wearing the matching earrings. The ones Director Carter had told me about. I recognized them instantly. When she saw me, her face changed slightly. Darius saw me too. He walked towards me, his voice low. What are you doing here? I looked at the perfectly pinned boutonniere on his chest. Attending a gala. This is a company event, not a place for you to make a scene. I know. I took a glass of water from a passing waiter's tray. So I'm not here to make a scene. I'm here to correct the record. His face darkened. Zarya, don't push me. I smiled. You've got it all wrong. Am I the one being pushed right now? Just then, the host took the stage. Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to the 8th anniversary celebration of Origin Tech. And now, please welcome Mr. Darius Morgan for his address. Applause erupted. Darius shot me a look, then turned and walked onto the stage. He stood in the spotlight, resuming his calm, confident persona. Thank you all for your support. Over the past 8 years, Origin Tech has seen its share of lows, and we've celebrated our highs. For me personally, my career would not be where it is today without my team, and without the understanding of my family. When he said family, his gaze fell on me. Many people followed his line of sight. Someone recognized me and whispered, Isn't that Mrs. Morgan? Haven't seen her in ages. Darius continued. Recently, there have been some untrue rumors about my personal life that have caused some trouble for the company. I want to say here that we are handling our family matters appropriately, and I hope the public will not overinterpret the situation. Handling our family matters appropriately. One sentence to cover betrayal, transfer of assets, and his mother's abandonment at the hospital, all neatly packaged as a family matter. Simone stood below the stage, her eyes glistening, looking like an innocent victim of public opinion. Just as the host was about to speak, I raised my hand. Mr. Morgan? The room quieted down a bit. Darius' face tensed. I walked towards the stage step by step. Someone tried to stop me. Amara stepped out from the side, handing them her card. I am Mrs. Morgan's legal counsel. Please refrain from any physical contact. I reached the front of the stage. I didn't grab the microphone. I just looked at Darius. You said untrue rumors. Which one are you referring to? His eyes warned me. Zaria, get down from here. I didn't move. Is it the one about you lying about your mother's car accident on Valentine's Day, while you were actually at Elysian Grove having dinner with Simone? Gasps rippled through the hall. Simone's face went white. Darius hissed. Do you have to say this here? I looked at him. You chose to whitewash your reputation here. I can only clarify the facts here. Amara handed a USB drive to the tech crew. The big screen lit up. The first photo was the scene inside Elysian Grove. Darius, leaning down to put the necklace on Simone. Timestamp, Valentine's Day, 9:14 p.m. The second was the hospital ER receipt. Loretta's admission time, 8:50, 2 p.m. The third was the log of missed calls to Darius's phone from the ER nurse. The fourth was a transcript of the 3 a.m. phone call. Loretta, Darius, where are you? Darius, I'm downstairs at the hospital. Simone, Darius, who is that? The audience was completely silent. Darius stood under the lights, the color draining from his face. I didn't look at him. I looked at the investors, the partners, the old clients in the audience. Ladies and gentlemen, you came tonight for a company celebration. You shouldn't have to listen to this. But since Mr. Morgan just claimed the rumors were untrue, as a party involved, I feel it's necessary to clarify. I switched to the next slide. Joint account statements. Simone's apartment deposit. Her studio's startup capital. The custom necklace. The earring deposit. All of these expenditures occurred during our marriage, and without my consent. Simone suddenly rushed forward. Zaria, that's enough. You're bringing our private matters into a public forum. Are you trying to ruin him? I looked at the earrings she was wearing. Simone, have you taken off those earrings yet? She instinctively covered her ears. All eyes in the room fell on her. She realized she had just exposed herself. I said, last month, you ordered these earrings for a wedding reception. The deposit was $120,000, paid for by Darius Morgan. You knew he was not divorced, yet you were already preparing your wedding jewelry. Whispers started to spread. Isn't that just a mistress? And using the wife's money to buy it. Mr. Morgan really messed up. Simone's face was ashen, tears streaming down her face. I didn't force him. He loves me. I nodded. Then you should let him love you with his own money. At that, someone in the hall couldn't help but let out a snicker. Simone looked as if she had reached the peak of humiliation. She turned to Darius. Say something! Darius stood there. He wanted to speak, but the evidence was on the screen, clear as day. For the first time, he realized words couldn't save him. An investor stood up, his face cold. Mr. Morgan, are your personal and company finances mixed? Darius immediately said, no. The company's finances are completely separate. I said, then please cooperate with the audit. Because I have personally fronted the costs for some VIP procurement, and the reimbursements went into your personal account. The investor's expression grew even darker. This wasn't just commercial revenge. But people who betray their marriages are often not clean in other areas either. They get used to blurring lines. Family, company, wife, mother. As long as it can be used for their benefit, they take it. Darius finally looked at me. His eyes were no longer angry. They were panicked. Zaria, enough. I turned off the screen. It is enough. I took the divorce agreement out of my bag. This is the final version. You can sign it, or you can wait for the court to rule. Either way, I will get back what is mine. I placed the agreement on the stage. And stop telling people our family matter is resolved. As long as I haven't signed, you haven't resolved anything. With that, I turned and walked off the stage. Behind me, Simone was crying and questioning Darius. Investors were demanding an explanation. The host was awkwardly trying to smooth things over. The entire ballroom was like a fancy tablecloth that had been ripped away, revealing the rotten wood underneath. When I walked out of the hotel, the night air was cool. In the parking lot, Darius caught up to me. His voice was hoarse. Zaria. I stopped. He stood a few feet away, his eyes red. I've always loved you. I looked at him and thought how light those words felt. Too light to matter. I said, you love the life I propped up for you. The divorce papers weren't signed right after the gala. Darius dragged it out for 3 weeks. He tried to win me back, tried to negotiate a lower settlement, tried to get Loretta to persuade me, and even tried to make Simone bear some of the financial burden. But Simone was more pragmatic than he had imagined. 3 days after the gala, they had a huge fight. The reason was simple. The necklace had to be returned, the earring deposit was being pursued, and the apartment and studio funds were on the list for repayment. She was unwilling. She said, "You gave me all of that voluntarily." Darius said, "But that was community property." Simone sneered, "You didn't say that when you were giving it to me." Darius himself sent me the transcript of this conversation. He probably wanted to prove that he had finally seen Simone for who she was. But I only found it ironic. Two people who had treated someone else's marriage like a personal ATM were now fighting over how to divide the loot. Amara just said, "Save it." I did. The day Loretta was discharged from the hospital, I went to pick her up. Not as her daughter-in-law, but because she had signed the witness statement and the repayment plan was written into the agreement. I needed to handle the documents. She looked at me, wanting to say something but hesitating. Finally, she just said, "Zaria, come back and visit when you have time." I didn't agree. I said, "Mrs. Morgan, please take care of yourself." Her eyes turned red, but she nodded. I know. Some relationships can't be fixed with a simple, "I'm sorry." I accepted her late-coming clarity. But the pain she had caused me wouldn't disappear because of it. I could choose not to hate her. But I didn't have to continue being her family. On the day of the divorce mediation, Darius was dressed formally, as if for an important negotiation. I wore a white blouse and black trousers, my hair tied back, a file folder by my side. In the mediation room, Amara sat next to me, Darius's lawyer next to him. The agreement was reviewed, item by item. The house. Compensation for the post. Marital mortgage payments and appreciation. Joint account. Repayment of irregular expenditures. Simone. Separate legal action for the recovery of improper gifts. My payments for the Morgan family's medical bills, house repairs, and Nia's loans were confirmed as debts based on the evidence. The money I fronted for Darius's company was to be settled according to the statements. Each item wasn't about me taking advantage. It was about me taking back what was mine. When we got to the end, Darius suddenly said, "Zaria, I can give you all the money. Can you just not do it like this?" I looked at him, like what? After 7 years, all that's left between us are these numbers? I was silent for a moment. Then I took the wedding ring from my file and placed it on the table. It's not just numbers. There's also this. He looked at the ring, a jolt of shock in his eyes. I said, "I really did want to spend the rest of my life with you." The room fell silent. I gave you my trust, my time, my compromises, my dignity. You took them all for granted. Now I want the numbers, because they are the only thing that can still be confirmed, recovered, and written into an agreement. Feelings can't be cashed out. Pain can't be compensated. The 7 wasted years can't be rewound. So I can only count what can be counted. The rest, I'll have to deal with on my own. Darius looked down. A long time later, when he picked up the pen to sign, his hand trembled. I didn't look at him. I signed my own name. Zaria. The strokes were clear, clean, and decisive. Walking out of the mediation room, Darius followed me. "Zaria." I stopped. He stood in the hallway, as if he finally didn't know what to call me. Husband was no longer right. Lover, that was long gone. Not even a friend. He said, "If I hadn't gone to see Simone back then, would we be different?" I looked out the window at the light. Yes. His eyes lit up for a second. I continued. I would have realized much later how unhappy I was. That little light in his eyes went out. I said, "Darius, you didn't lose me because of Simone. You lost me because Simone showed me who you really are." His eyes turned red. "I really regret it." "Then remember this feeling," I said, turning away, "but don't use it to bother me again." The day we went to the courthouse to get the final decree, the weather was beautiful. Darius got there before me. He was holding his copy of the settlement agreement, the edges already a little worn. The clerk went through the process. "Do you both voluntarily agree to this divorce?" I said I do. Darius hesitated for a second. Finally, he said in a hoarse voice, "I do." The stamp came down. The judge signed the papers, and we were handed our official divorce decrees. A simple stack of papers, but it felt like it pushed open a door that had been pressing down on me for 7 years. Outside the courthouse, Darius stood at the bottom of the steps. "Zaria, in the future." I cut him off. "There is no in the future." He looked at me. I said calmly, "From now on, you will take care of your mother, handle your company, recover the money you gave away, and face the consequences you deserve. And I will live my life." He asked in a low voice, "Are you going back to Legacy?" I nodded. "The exhibition is next month." He gave a bitter smile. "So you finally went back?" "No," I looked at him. I'm moving forward. After that day, I put the old wedding ring and all the copied documents into a file and locked it in the bottom of a cabinet. Not to remember, but to remind myself, never again put anyone else's needs before my own life. 3 months later, the Legacy Jewels Independent Woman exhibition opened. In the center of the gallery, there was no pink diamond necklace. It had been recovered and was now part of a legal proceeding. I chose another piece for the main display. A ring with no central stone. The design description was just one line. Complete, without needing to be given. On opening night, Director Carter stood beside me, smiling. "Welcome back, curator." I looked at the people milling around the gallery, and I suddenly felt like crying. But it wasn't sadness. It was the ache in your chest when you finally hear your own name again. At 10 p.m., I received a text from Loretta. "Zaria, I went for my checkup by myself today. The doctor said I'm recovering well." I replied, "Wishing you a speedy recovery." She sent another message. "Thank you." I looked at it for a long time and didn't reply. At 11 p.m., a text came from an unknown number. "Zaria, I'm outside Elysian Grove." I knew it was Darius. I deleted it. I didn't block him. Some people aren't worth blocking. Because they can no longer enter your world. Outside the window, the city lights were bright. I turned off my phone and continued to edit my speech for the second day of the exhibition. On the table was a cup of hot tea, a bouquet of white roses I had bought for myself, and a new business card. Zaria, curator, not Mrs. Morgan, not someone's supportive wife, not a background character for someone else's lies. I was finally myself again.